Cryptids. Do you believe in them or not? We just get started with that.
Um, Cryptids. I guess not really. I mean, I lived in Appalachia for a while, but I definitely feel like because of just the reality of the unexplored oceans and the reality of there still being remote places in this world, there's got to be other stuff out there. You know what I mean? I don't know if there's going to be something like Mothman. I'm more partial to believe in something like the Lake Champlain monster or
Hmm.
something like that than I am to believe something like actual Mothman with like glowing red eyes and all that stuff. And I know all the stories about that. That just happens to be local to where I lived in West Virginia. But yeah, I mean I guess that's my take on it because I'm from South Africa, so I know that it's a big world out there. There's lots of animals out there. Even ones you don't see all the time doesn't mean they're not out there. You do not see them all the time, but that doesn't mean they're not there. So if that makes a better explanation of what I said, hopefully that or what I mean, hopefully that
Yeah, no, I
illuminates.
understand. Like cryptids, it's just I think the definition is like creatures not discovered by science yet, you
Right.
know. So that
Hmm.
could just be anything that hasn't
Right.
been discovered. Most people think of like Bigfoot, Mothman, those kind of creatures.
That's what I
Um,
immediately think of when I hear cryptid. It's just the
yeah.
first thing that comes to mind is that.
No, I definitely think there's creatures in the oceans and the forests that we don't understand. Like Africa has, was it the Bembe, which is possibly just a living dinosaur.
Hmm.
I've heard stories of just like big tarantulas, not tarantulas, but big spiders in general around the
Hmm.
Congo. Just
Oh yeah,
interesting.
that's for sure. There's lots of big insects out there. I mean, I lived in LA for a long time, and during like the mating season for them, I think it's beginning. I think it's like it just in the end of fall usually,
Mhm.
September, October. Um, it might be actually in April. I actually might be in April. I can't really remember exactly. It could be April. I don't know. But the tarantulas all come out to go and mate, and they're just all over the place. Especially if you live in like the Hollywood Hills, or if you live anywhere nearby like the hilly areas. They're slightly more like wild, if you will, in LA, or on the outskirts of town. You will see like hundreds of tarantulas just walking around trying to find their lover. Yeah, but that's another thing I thought about. There's got to be more. There's obviously more insects in the world that we don't know about that we learn about every day.
Yeah, I had heard something about what we thought limited insects today compared to the past really
Hmm.
doesn't work in their kind of theory, so we don't know why insects aren't as big as they used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, big insects are frightening, especially like spiders. Like I've killed like three black widows in the last like two
Oh
or three
yeah.
months in the backyard. I'm kind of in the desert
Yeah.
myself,
Okay. Yeah,
so
they're
yeah,
common
they're
out
all
here
over
in
the
Idaho as
place.
well.
I know South America has a few in the Amazon, big spiders. I thought I heard too Appalachia has a few stories of that too, big spiders.
Yeah, I think they probably have like in Idaho we have brown recluse spiders too, which are the ones that do gotta look out for. I keep mentioning Idaho because that's where I am now. I'm visiting my parents here. Um, I think one thing about like regarding insects that has been really like troubling me, especially because I drove across the country just recently to move over here. One thing that really troubled me, which isn't that I've noticed. I mean, I'm 33 now, so I'm not like an old guy saying like, oh, there used to be way more of some of this in the past. But one thing I noticed is that like there are so few, there's so much fewer like bugs in general that like you hit on the highway on your with your car driving down the highway. Like I remember driving from Salt Lake to Boise when I was going to University of Utah, and there were so many bugs in the front. I had a Volvo back then, an old little like Volvo whatever back then, and there were so many bugs on the front of my car after driving, during the summertime through the fields out there. And in comparison, we drove through like bigger fields, I guess you could say, like in Kansas and stuff like that. I don't know if it's like they're like pest killing or what it is, but there were like no bugs, man. And I mean, just from a state of like ecological like sustaining an ecology. Like you can't have just no bugs. You know, like all the small animals have to eat something. Um, and I just was like, that's something that I saw that I really was like, I know it's kind of a conspiracy theory thing, that kind of divert from what we were talking about with cryptids, but it's something that I noticed. It's in the natural world that I was like blown away by. Like, there's like no more insects, and I wonder what these animals are even able to eat. I really, yeah, it's that's something that troubles me that I had to bring up. I don't know if you've noticed that at all yourself. You mentioned that you're out in the desert, so you may have experienced it in the past too. But do you guys get like Mormon crickets out where you are?
I don't know about Mormon crickets, but yeah, we tend to get a good amount of crickets. I don't know what species they are.
Mm-hmm.
Certain types
Like
of the
the little
year.
black ones, like this big. They come in thousands of them
Uh,
all at
they're
once.
not black. They're more like tan, kind of brownish.
Oh yeah, so like just like your standard cricket. Yeah.
hmm
Okay.
But for something like that, I think it could be a number of things. Like you brought up the pesticides. Could be
Mm-hmm.
a year-to-year thing. Maybe the less one year, more the other.
Yeah.
Maybe they've kind of just learned not to go by the highways. Maybe, I don't know. If they're that
Yeah.
intelligent.
Yeah. It was something that I just thought about that was like I said, just something that I noticed driving across the country, and I was like, wow, this is like it's. And I mean, maybe I just don't know. It'd be like that. I've been around farming my whole life too. It could just be like pesticide use that's like severely limited. But I mean, even then, like that's not good for the overall ecology of an area in any by any means, you know. So because that pollinates flowers, you know, like it goes way deeper than just saying like, oh, well, that means all the birds aren't eating insects. That means that the bats aren't eating insects. I don't know. It's something that I noticed that I wanted to bring up because we were talking about insects. I think is that right? We were talking about insects.
Well, I had brought up like the big spider cryptids.
Right, right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Sorry, I'm sort of derail or anything like that.
No,
But
no
I
worries.
think you mentioned speaking about like cryptids and like conspiracy theories. So just
No,
something that I
I'm good
saw
to
that
talk
I
about
wanted to bring
conspiracies
up.
too, because
Yeah.
sometimes they go hand in hand, especially when you talk about like government
Right.
cover-ups of certain ones.
Hmm.
Um,
That's more like the Mothman stuff, if anything, as well.
yeah, like
Um,
there's one podcast I listened to called the Cryptids of the Corn. They're in
okay.
Ohio. They did a multi-part breakdown that seems maybe he could be like an interdimensional kind of a thing,
Okay.
which is a whole branch of conspiracy, not conspiracy, of cryptids.
Yeah, that's a whole bunch of conspiracy as well. I mean, like think about like what Alex Jones has been big for a while. We say like the interdimensional, like the interdimensional child molesters and stuff like that. And I mean Tucker Carlson, has talked a lot about like the oh man, I just got lost train of thought here. Um, about like the demonic entities that he believes in, and like that's been explored in a lot of movies. Like there's a movie from like had like Lawrence Fishburne in it. I think it's called like Event Horizon.
Oh yeah, that one's really good.
Yeah, and they talk about that how the interdimensional, because that's really what you would think about would be at play here. Because like if you just conceptualize maybe Christianity and like good and evil in the sense of like dimensional, you know what I
hmm
mean? In a dimensional sense, as opposed to thinking of it as like a locational sense, as we tend to think. Um, yeah, that's something that it is like a whole other like branch of like the world, because that's where it starts to bring in like faith people as well as people that are like scientists as well as people that are part of like the cryptid world as well, because it's such a different, you don't even know what you're dealing with, you know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, well, are these people, some people just call them like, oh, those are all demons. What they would mean the same as like an alien or a cryptid would be perceived by them as being something of that nature. Then again, though, like I also think an animal is a totally different thing than like an interdimensional spirit thing. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, that's
but again,
something.
it's
Oh,
something we don't know about. You know, so
yeah, that's something people get into. It's like just Bigfoot alone. Are they biological? Or the aliens?
mhm.
Or the demons? Or the interdimensional?
Right. People say Bigfoot's being interdimensional.
Yeah, because allegedly some stories out there they are entering portals or like possibly entering trees. Like the tree is a portal. Like there's
Okay.
some weird stories out there, but I think that kind of also overlaps with the idea of like fae. creatures and things wearing things as masks, like
Mhm.
the perfect camouflage for an otherworldly being would be Bigfoot in a sense, because you would kind of blend in, but also no one's gonna believe you, and it won't generate like a whole big buzz.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a
So
good
yeah,
point.
there's
And
definitely a lot of overlap.
I've often thought about like that. I knew that notion of like people. Like they say, oh, like the Men in Black notion is that like, oh, they're like people but not people. They look like people but not people. Humans have a really strong uncanny valley. As
Hmm.
someone that works in like media, like the uncanny valley is people can oftentimes tell they're listening to AI music because it would make sense. You can tell that it's not there. People are quick at picking up, probably from our evolutionary past. Like with different species of hominids in the past, that's where they say it comes from, and being quick to pick up that like you're a Denisovan or you're a Neanderthal or you're a different kind of human essentially from way back in our evolutionary history. So like that valley and the uncanny valley appears in like video games. Like you can't really get past like a video game can get to like hyper realistic and then it just falls off to the sense of what is realism and then it comes back into when it actually is reality. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I think about that a lot. And like, yeah, you're right. You could like, if you were an interdimensional being or like a spacefarer, it would be way easier for you to like be something that has already been dismissed by someone who like Bigfoot or something like that. It would be easy to assume that. It would be way easier to do that than to become like to try and build like a human lookalike, or clone humans. It's just way simpler. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
because
not gonna call a spacefaring nation or interdimensional people it's dumb. Like, they probably just choose the easier option, like any human or anything would do, like any animal would do. So,
yeah,
but
like some
that's just
people,
my
not that they're saying it's simulation theory, but a higher dimensional being can choose their avatar here on a lesser
right.
plane, and it could just be something like that. Um,
Yeah, true. That's a good
but
point.
no, about like the uncanny valley, um, was it like skinwalkers and other mimics will do that too,
Right.
like copy voices and people that could play a role in it, while we're also very suspicious of things that seem human but not.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely have. I've definitely had experiences. I was thinking like my parents live in the backwoods out here in Idaho in the Cascade region, which is like it's like the center of Idaho. If you look for it, it's like right in the middle of where the whole thing
The
meets.
whole st yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like the woods at night there are scary, but in a different sense to the woods at night in West Virginia is scary. Like out by Harper's Ferry, it's like it feels old and like terrifying and almost like there's like spirits around you. And there's obviously been a lot of battles and wars have been fought there, and many people have lived and died in that area for thousands of years. And it just feels like there's like so much. It's like in the West, like the environment is like indifferent to you survival, but in the East, it feels like the environment is like hype. It's like it's focused on your demise. If that makes sense, like it's the left just feel not the left the what do you call it the left side of the country. I was going to say the left side. The west coast of the country has much more open spaces and stuff like that, so you feel the exposure more and you feel like you're alone more. But in Appalachia, it just feels like there are places where like you're not alone. You know what I mean? And that's what triggers like all the other fears and things like that. Because it's so I don't know if you've been to Appalachia, but it's so dark at night there. Like I can also see how that would play into people's sightings of things. Do you know anything about like the like alien sightings that were going on in like the early 30s in that area? Do you know about all that stuff? Like the late 40s, 50s. I think it was maybe 50s or
It
40s.
depends what event, but like going back to like Mothman, some people think the TNT plant might have been like a underground base, and they might have been doing stuff like the Philadelphia projects, messing with
Oh yeah.
gateways and stuff. But no, a lot of people bring up the 40s with UFO because that seems to be a very focal point.
Hmm.
Because you had like the occult stuff going on with like Crowley getting
Oh,
into
so
contact in like the early 1900s with entities. I think he died in 47, and then
hmm.
there you had
Yeah, that's
Roswell
amazing.
in 47. There was a few other crashes before then, but like the 40s seems like where everything kind of like skyrocketed. Some people also attribute that to the atomic bombs, other civilizations picking up on that, or the release of so much energy could have weakened doorways and stuff, shaking things up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, um, I think another thing that I've considered sometimes, I think a lot of people consider it too, is like there have been other events like the 1519 sightings in Germany with like this pictures in the sky and stuff like that. These are like things for me that would like reaffirm that like these like cryptids and things like this are real and there's way more going on that we don't know about. So that's why I'm willing to like I'm more willing I think than like the average average internet person to be like, well, there's merit to this, like people don't always just claim sightings, like not everyone is a straight liar who's trying to get popular from a story, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like there are people that have legitimately had experiences that have said things that are like I've watched video of them speaking. I'm like, man, this guy's not lying. You know what I mean? Like a human's pretty good at telling like if like, this guy's fooling me. Or at least I think I am because of my line of work in the past. It just often I'm not willing to just say like, oh, like for instance, you mentioned the TNT factory. That's a great cover for bringing lots of chemicals in
Hmm.
big containers that no one's going to care or look at. You know what I mean? Or think of if there's a big truck rolling in and out of there to transport material, transport entities, transport anything. Like yeah, and I mean that's been explored in like media as well, like the Stranger Things
Yeah, that's all
show
based on like
is like
the
based
Montauk, which came out of
right.
like MK Ultra and the Philadelphia kind of stuff.
Right, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it would lend to like it lends to credibility as opposed to not lending to credibility. And I mean, like, maybe there's some that I'm like less likely to consider real. What are ones that you are well versed in?
Uh, Probably Bigfoot and like Dogman. That tends to be the ones that I hear the most of. There's always like gonna be like the one-off kind of
Okay.
cryptids. Like West Virginia has a lot of like one-off monsters.
Yeah, a
Um,
lot. Yeah.
but yeah, probably that. And maybe like the UFO kind of angel demon connection.
Hmm.
Because I listen to Tony Mokel. He dives into a lot of the supernatural stuff. I know he
Yeah.
was on Timcast a couple times.
Yeah.
He has a really good podcast. But that's I think why cryptids and conspiracies kind of go hand in hand because you never really know what's going on. Like if you go the religious perspective, I think
Mm.
anything that is humanoid probably really isn't an alien because something alien would actually be alien to us and we wouldn't understand what we're looking at.
Right.
But I do think aliens do exist because there are stories of like big crab-like beings that people have seen, and they're basically like, we're getting gas. Don't bother us. We won't bother you. We're gonna leave soon."
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think anything humanoid might be like Nephilim, demon kind of a thing. Um, Same with like spirits.
Right.
That dives into like the whole like Nephilim origin,
Hmm.
where
Yeah.
demons and stuff come from. I think jinn might also fall into that
Yeah.
because I heard somewhere that the reason you encounter a lot of spirits in like high mountains and desert places is because they
Hmm.
don't like the water because of the flood, which
Oh,
makes
the
sense
gin
in a
though.
way.
Interesting. That's
Um,
interesting.
yeah,
Jinn are like maybe for someone that's listening to this or watching this, jinn is like the Islamic idea of a demon, correct?
kind of sort of. I think it
Like a
says
bad
they're
spirit.
like
Maybe a demon
angel or
is
demon adjacent. That's why I
yeah,
think
exactly.
Nephilim.
Maybe demon is more Christian or
Yeah,
Christian
but
eccentric. I'd say just like
they're spiritual in
evil.
nature. That but yeah, I think was it they said they're made from smokeless fire, so they're like
Right.
angel
Yeah,
demon
smokeless fire.
adjacent.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think like it's interesting how a lot of cultures have a similar approximation to these things too. I've lived
Hmm.
everywhere my whole life. I'm lucky enough to have lived all over the world my whole life, and I've heard so many different stories. And some of them are like you can discern like, okay, this is a story to keep children out of the forest, in
Hmm.
Germany, so that the kids don't run to the forest and then get lost and get killed by anything at that point. It could be frost and cold and exposure at that point. But
Yeah.
then there are other stories that are like, this is a credible member of society. You know, like this is like a grown man. I'm 33. I'm a grown man now, and they're clearly telling everyone like, no, dude, like I am sure I saw this. You know what I mean? Staking their life and their reputation sometimes on these claims. I think about like that makes you think about people like the guy that worked at what is it called, like Site Four or whatever, the
Oh, Bob
Roswell.
Lazar. Yeah, I think it
Bob
was Site
Lazar, right?
4.
And how his story has been straight for 30 years. You know what I mean? Like, um, those are people that, like that I'm willing to like, or like the Lieutenant Favor guy with the sightings of like the little orbs and stuff like that. I mean, those are people that are not they're not gaining anything from talking about this stuff and pointing it out. So like, I don't understand. I don't. My knee jerk reaction is not just to just discount people like that. I find like a lot of people in religious circles and some like intellectual circles are just quick to be like, oh well, that's just boring. Like I'd rather focus on real stuff. It's like, yeah, but what if the what if the nature of this stuff that's negative in the political and et cetera, or in the societal ails that we're feeling are born of these entities involving or being involved in our reality. I don't know, but I'm just saying, what if? You know what I mean? I don't think that like Tucker Carlson thinks that like Trump had like sent like a demonic force on him or whatever he said on one of his podcast episodes a long time ago. I don't know if it's like that. You know, I don't think Trump is like conjuring demons, in my opinion. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like I wouldn't say that like because I don't understand it, and because I'm not a person that would understand this, and because I think there is like a bigger spiritual conflict going on in humanity, I would say that I'm more willing to listen to it than the average person. So like, yeah, I mean that's something where like you have to get people of all walks of life kind of involved in the conversation so that you can fill in and inform all of the different aspects of it. You know what I mean? To
Mhm.
actually flesh out and define like what you're talking about in a sense. Because like if you don't have that background knowledge of like what a jinn is and know that it's not like, oh, it's not just like as cut and dry as it is in Christianity, or where it's like, oh, you're good or bad, or an evil, or you're evil or good, you know, like angel demon. Um, that's like those are things that change the discussion. You know what I mean, and change the I think the perception of someone just like being interested in it. You know what I mean? At least for me, it's something that makes me. It's so like it's all encompassing. You know what I mean? It's like a system. I'm a statistics guy, and I like systems. I like building stuff like that. So I think about it a lot like that, and think about there must be stuff that we don't know because we didn't even know what gravity was until until we knew that stuff fell
It just
down. We
didn't
didn't
really have a
understand it.
name. Yeah.
Right? Didn't understand until like Newton. So it's it's just to point out like we didn't know germ theory until the late 1800s. You know, like yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff in the world that we don't know, and I'm always willing to like I always want to like find more about this. Is there something that you think is like a what is something that seems promising to you for some of the cryptids you mentioned that you were interested in, or some of these topics we're talking about? What's like something that you are like hopeful for? I guess you could say.
Well, I don't know if I would phrase it like I'm hopeful they exist, but I think good candidates are those that kind of stay more into
Good
like the
candidates. Let's go. Yeah.
biological aspect of things. That way,
Okay.
it's separated from all the woo-woo stuff people bring up, like I mentioned, the cryptids of the corn. His job was to go out and do surveys to make sure certain animals were or were not in like creeks. That way, companies could come in and develop. He talked to a
Mhm.
guy who didn't believe in Bigfoot, but then he went home like crunched the numbers, and he thought based on like black bears, what how much calories they eat. Mostly they eat like frogs on a riverbank.
Mhm.
Um, and then they need like 150 square miles of roaming space. You could have anywhere between like 12 to like 1600 Bigfoots all across the United States, up into Canada and stuff. So I think if
Right.
they are biological, it could work.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I can see that happening too. I mean, people don't realize how remote some of like the places out here in the West are too. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Um, like even I just drove with my father on like this road in backcountry middle of nowhere that was like when you get out there, when you drive like 15, 20 miles and you're actually out there, you're out there. You know what I mean? Like there's nobody around.
Hmm.
So it's not inconceivable to me or to anyone that's been in the Midwest. Like it's a jungle, dude. Like it's so dense. The forest in the Midwest there, or in the Midwest, in the Northwest is so dense all the way up through, Banff, like all the way up to the north. Pretty much once you hit the forest, the Boise National Forest, that forest goes forever. Like it doesn't stop all the way up until you get to the north where like the actual trees don't grow because it's too cold. You know what I mean? Um, so like yeah, to think that they wouldn't be able to survive there is kind of ridiculous to me. I think that that's why it's so believable. That's why people have thought about this for so long. You know what I mean? That's the
Yeah, and if
exact
you base it off of like chimp and like gorilla behavior, they don't if they don't want to be found, they're not gonna be found.
right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
and there's a lot of creepy stories of like Bigfoot being up in trees.
Hmm.
Um, so if you're not, looking up, you're just looking straight, you might not see them. Some say they have dropped down onto the ground and like spider crawled away. Um, which makes sense too, because
Wow.
if you're looking up to something that's like 7 foot and then it drops, you're not gonna see it because you might still be looking up, not
Right. Yeah.
down. But another one possibility could be the dogmen, which are basically like werewolves.
That's what I was going to ask you about. You mentioned I didn't really know
Yeah, that's
what
just
that
a term
is.
people have thrown all about them, but they're basically werewolves.
Okay.
They just don't seem to turn, like with the moon and stuff. It's just an always upright dog. So
Okay.
that one might be a bit harder to explain because of, if you believe in evolution, how does a dog, learn to stand up and develop hands?
Hmm.
Um, but there's some people that bring into like the government conspiracies of them creating them. Um, but also there's the Christian, I forget how you say it, but basically there's been stories of like dog-headed humanoids in the Bible and stuff. So
Yeah, and like the
who
Egyptians
knows?
have the
Yeah,
the
like Jack, or
Anubis.
was it? Yeah, Anubis, jackal-headed god. I think there's a few other ones in mythology. They had animal heads. So
Yeah.
I think was it the Greeks have one that Zeus cursed a guy to turn
So you're pointing
into.
it towards like a much bigger phenomena than just like a single culture's reference to like Wendigo or something like that. You're talking about a much bigger thing that's potentially in many different countries around the world because
Yeah,
of
like Bigfoot and Dogman. It's not just a U.S. thing. People all over the world have claimed seeing Bigfoot-like creatures and Dogman-like creatures.
wow, interesting. That's I didn't even really know. I've never heard this term like dogman and associate, but
Mm.
I can understand what it means. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I
like
know
for
what werewolves
a
are.
while, that was always like my favorite kind of horror movie creature is a werewolf because it's so like terrifying and
Mm,
interesting. And then when I started hearing about Dogman, that caught my interest too.
okay.
Some people have broke that up that if you look into the occult side, you have the
Mhm.
werewolves, which is basically just shape-shifting. You could make a deal with some entity to get the power or do or be cursed, and then the dogmen are just the more biological aspects, which
Okay.
I wonder if the two can kind of, in a sense, like crossbreed. Did you ever see the Underworld movies?
I know what those are. They were like in my era. I just wasn't really like into that at the time.
Mhm.
Like I've seen things like of the same ilk, um, like the same cohort of movies. I guess you could say like I can't remember the names now, but I've seen things like oh, is it no? It's not Constantine. It's something else. Van Helsing.
Oh
Van
yeah, a lot of
Helsing.
people say they look like the Van Helsing one.
Right. So
Um,
that's like a dog thing, right? Or there's a werewolf in that, I think.
well, they call him the Wolfman.
Okay.
But some of the stories I hear, they say, yeah, they look like that, or they, But I bring up the Underworld because one of the
Yeah.
prequels, they dive into it and they say like the Lycans are second generation.
Okay.
The dude's mom was pregnant with him and she got turned, so he's kind of like a blade half breed. So
Oh,
I
okay.
wonder if the two could play something like that. Like if you turn into a werewolf, could you mate with like a big wolf and create something biological that has the
Oh,
mix of
that's
two
interesting.
features? Because I
Yeah.
think in American Werewolf in Paris, they make that joke. The dude's in a wolf form and then he looks at the dog and it cuts the next day and the dog's flat and he wakes up next to him, implying that he tried to get on with the dog but was, squished
Oh,
it.
I see. Okay.
Um, so yeah, if you have something big enough like a
Well,
wolf, like wolves are more bigger than dogs, or
mhm.
could you blend magic with biology and get something like a dogman? Or
Right.
like I
And like,
said, the government just splicing genes together in like, the 70s. And that's why
yeah.
we have so many nowadays, assets escaping and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, um, there's like that's why the Stranger Things took off so much because I think people were or we have been made aware with like the disclosures from MK Ultra and like the thing about MK Ultra that always I have to remind people is like it's not just that MK Ultra happened, it's almost a miracle we know about it even happening. And then you think about the fact that they burned and destroyed so much of that information they gathered. Then you think about they could have done that to so many other things. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
so many other things could have been totally wiped out of existence. Could have been totally deleted, like
Yeah, because we
to
only
the
know
last
about
drop.
MK Ultra because people in like memos mentioned it. We don't know what happened. We just know
Right.
it did happen. Some
Right.
people have
Mm.
kind of came out and said, we've experimented with stuff, but we really don't know what went on. Um,
Well, I mean, like the CIA did their whole like I don't know how much you know about this, but this has always been a pet project of mine, and this is again part of like it's a this is such a like pan topic or it's like such a large topic. There's so many things there's so many disciplines that are coming into this thing. One thing I think about is how the CIA eventually or have basically have said that they confirm that there's like a spirit world that they don't know how necessarily works, but they are confident that it exists through like the things with like the remote viewing people, um, like the Men Who Stare at Goats thing. That was a whole movie about that stuff.
mhm.
And like the people that faked it, and then there's also a lot of proof that this stuff has been real. Like there has been a lot of proof that this stuff is actually real. And like it's stuff like that I think we can you can look laterally at like the government not knowing what these like orbs are or claiming to not know what these orbs are. The government not like suddenly saying, "Oh well, we have a lot of information about UFOs and stuff like that." I mean, yes, it's a really useful political tool to like divert from like unfortunate stories that have come out in the news media for sure, but also they're like they're willing to tell us something like that's crazy like that. Then there has to be more. You know what I mean? Like if they're only willing to divulge this amount of information under this amount of pressure, well then there's more than likely there's a bunch more a bunch more of
Yeah,
it.
they're
You know what
just
I
kind of
mean?
scraping the surface.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
and I think like that's it. When you start to put it all together, when you start to put together like people like Lazar, and you start to see your the videos we see that the new videos that keep coming out, the new information keeps coming out all the time. I mean, maybe it's human tech that we don't know about. Maybe like it's a very real possibility. But then you also think has it been back engineered, which is also a very real possibility. You know what I mean? And I just think like we don't really understand like life as much as we like to think we do. Like I think from talking to my friends that are doctors, that have told me so many stories about like how placebo effects work with people, and like just how things that they wouldn't have immediately thought would be effective treatments ended up being effective treatments because of like a roundabout circuitous they just helped affecting the illness in a roundabout circuitous way. Um, and I just start to like really believe this stuff more. That's kind of why I wanted to have this conversation, anyways, or why I agreed to have this conversation. Because like I'm not known for like my interest in cryptids or anything like that, But I mean, I am a Christian. I am a Christian man. I really, I do believe in Christ. I mean, I think it's important to live a Christ-like life. I don't go to church all the time. I do go to church occasionally when I can, and I'm Presbyterian. I'm not Catholic, although I've grown up around a lot of Catholics, and I have friends that are Orthodox. So I know a lot about these religions. Like I went to school in Singapore. I know a lot about Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism just from being around people. And like every one of these cultures, all these people have like stories like this. They all have references to things like this around the world. So it just like it can't. It's just maybe something we don't know yet. We may not have discovered it yet, and I think it's like hubris to think like we've got it all figured out. Like, oh, we're the age of the last man. We've got everything sorted out. We know everything. We know what to expect. Everything like that's just modern hubris, and that's happened like that happened in the 1900s and World War One. That happened in the 1800s when electricity was invented. It's happened in time and time again in history. It's happened a lot more recently because the parabolic curve of like how technology has evolved has started to get very steep now, including with AI and stuff. So I don't know. Like I'm really happy that we're talking about this because it's going to make me look at the forest differently. You know what I mean? It always makes me
Yeah.
like look at things differently and listen to things differently and taking stories that I see. And I'm a big fan of like do you know like Wendigoon on YouTube? Probably you do know who that is.
I think so because I do follow was it Aiden Mattis and the Lower Lodge? I
Aiden
think they
Mattis,
do
yeah, yeah,
stuff with them.
yeah. Aiden's a great guy. Like
Hmm.
I love that dude. And I would have liked to had a chance to meet Wendigoon because he lived in Appalachia, but he lives further down. I think he lives in like Tennessee area, something like that. Not to dox him, I think that's where he lives. It's further down. I don't know if it's necessarily Kentucky or Tennessee or where it is, but I know he's further into
Yeah,
Appalachia than I ever was.
around there's a lot of stories like the land between lakes having dogmen like entities. Um,
Yeah, have you ever heard about or have you ever heard anything about like that would like relate them this like the stories across um like across the lines of like do you view like because when you're talking about dogmen and Bigfoot and stuff it sounds like you're more like interested in the biological like the I guess you'd say like the source of it like you'd say it's root it's coming out of biology or the natural world or do you view it as something that has been like corrupted by either like I don't know if you're a faithful person or not if like you feel something has been
uh,
influenced by that or if you feel it's been influenced by humans on another end or like where do you think that what's the genesis of this.
well, actually, it's funny you say Genesis because a lot of people say if you're looking at it from a religious perspective, maybe they could be the descendants of Nephilim because it says,
Right,
the
yeah,
Watchers came down, mated with man and animal.
right. I talked to some
Um,
of the guys from like the Tower Gang pod about stuff like this.
mhm.
The Nephilim Death Squad, the X that doesn't exist anymore. But like I spoke to them at length about this.
Yeah, so that could be like I'm more agnostic. I don't cons
Okay.
you know, was it conscribed to one religion, even though I was baptized as a Christian in high school.
Okay.
Because I do definitely think there is a spiritual realm. I do believe spiritual warfare is a thing. I don't
Absolutely.
think
I
Trump's
agree. I do.
probably
I
is
do agree
is
with that.
doing rituals, but I think other people are.
Yeah.
So that could be one thing. Going through like the Nephilim bloodline, um, which could explain some of the more mystical aspects of them, depending on how close they are to the original source. Because as you go down the generations, supposedly if you have less, angel blood, you would have less abilities, so to speak. But also, they, because I think Bigfoot's more of like an umbrella term than like one singular creature. Because
Yeah.
that could be an aspect. I want to say, in some of the UFO files, some of
Hmm.
like the aliens we've had made contact with. But yeah, what I was talking about is, the supernatural side could explain some of the cryptids. If you're talking about like Nephilim bloodline, because I want to.
Recording in progress.
Oops. Stop.
Recording stopped.
Oh, is
So I was
that?
trying to figure out why I had
Oh,
that there.
because I have the OBS recording too on my end.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that. I apologize.
Um,
I was just trying to figure out why that was here.
because I want to say one of David's mighty man was said to have be a lion-headed man, which fits
Hmm.
in like kind of like the dog man or like the what do they call the whale panthers, the whale cats.
Okay.
Um, so that could be one aspect. Biologically, if you just take that part away, you could have some hybrids of was it Neanderthals, big apes, and humans. I know the natives have all kinds of stories of them breeding with their
Hmm.
women and taking them.
Yeah.
I know people have brought up certain animals when they go feral, they get bigger and hairier. So
Hmm.
maybe humans can just get big and hairy if they go feral, which
Hmm.
could explain some Bigfoot sightings as just, big hairy dudes in the woods.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's more of an umbrella term. That's why I kind of find it fascinating because there's no one answer. There's just a
Right. Yeah.
bunch of
Exactly.
possibilities, bunch of threads you can pull at.
Yeah.
Um,
That's kind of goes along with what I'm saying about how I really enjoy it because it's so multidisciplinary. There's so many
mhm.
different things to have to know about in order to like just have a conversation about it in like an informed way. And that's exactly kind of what I mean. I mean that almost exactly is what you put it in that like it's I mean it's tempting to maybe like it's like humans always want to have I guess closure or like they want to have like an understanding of something. We're always desperate for like having an understanding of how something works. And that's why I'm always am like I'm apprehensive to just, you know, give any one story too much credence because until you actually know about it. But then the thing is, at the same time, whenever the reality comes out, I also really believe in getting the story out to as many people as possible. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that's how we grow as a species. How we grow as humans individually, learning. Um, and that's why yeah, that kind of brings again like what I was saying, like that's why I'm so interested in having this conversation is because I just want to see what I like to see what people will have to talk about this stuff because there's like the whole idea of like, oh, it's anecdotal evidence. I'm like, yeah, but at the end of the day, all evidence is anecdotal. Like all evidence is something somebody has seen or witnessed and written down or recorded or whatever it might be. Like um, I guess anecdotal is different than like recorded hard evidence. You know what I mean? I guess it's different because you could just say, oh, take my word for it. But I mean it in a bigger way in the sense that like I just I want to live in a world that I don't totally understand. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, I
I
think the
don't think
world's a lot wilder than we give it credit for.
definitely. And I don't want to be someone that seems to or claims that like I understand everything because I don't. Um, yeah, so I'm always skeptical, maybe like more philosophical thing here. I'm always really skeptical of people that claim they know the whole thing. You know what I mean? Or unwilling to like say like, oh, I can see why you think this. This is why this is, or I can see why you think this is why this is. So um, yeah. So like I said, it's something that it means a lot to me because I mentioned I'm a Christian man. I also have lived a life and I've experienced a lot of different things, and that's why I'm also not willing to just immediately discredit something or discount something. Like how would Jesus Christ know about Bigfoot?
Mhm.
Like he probably wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like there'd be no way for him to actually have gotten that information. So like through the passage of time, we've also discovered animals that we didn't know in the Bible. That doesn't mean the animals didn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, was it like the whale is only one of the
Yeah,
only
yeah. There's
animals named?
Right, yeah, exactly. There's so many things we've discovered since then. Like we didn't know kangaroos existed. We didn't know
Hmm.
platypi existed. You know what I mean? We were
Yeah,
ready to call those
like
fakes.
early stories of explorers going into like the Africa, hearing stories of
Mm,
gorillas. They sound exactly like Bigfoots. Um,
right, exactly.
just
Right.
hairy humanoids coming in and from the mountains taking people and food,
Yeah.
kill you with one punch.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the size of
And
gorillas.
science has only known about the gorillas, I think, for only like 100 years.
It's not been a long time.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's and the thing is too, like if you think about how difficult it is to get to see silverback gorillas, like it's not easy. They're not like
Hmm.
just off the side of the road. You know what I mean? People always misunderstand that. Like they see deer in the U.S., I think, and they think like that's how most animals are. Like no, like in South Africa, if animals don't want to see you, like you're not going to see them. You're not going to see them. Like you might be able to like stake out an area and sit in a little blind, like a deer blind, for like 3 days, and you'll see one. You know what I mean? Like it's. I think it's just the it's like like you mentioned you live in the West, right? Or you live in the desert,
Yeah, Arizona.
Arizona. Yeah, okay. So like yeah, so like I said, like you're very aware of the scale and scope of like nature. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I find a lot of people that are less aware of that, or like that are less concerned with that.
Hmm.
Um, they just tend to dismiss things like this, I think, way too quickly. And I think when you do that, you cheapen your like understanding of the world. I think like it's better to have like some kind of like wonder and like not just think you have everything because you have one of these.
Hmm.
You know, you have all the knowledge in AI, you have all the knowledge in the computer on the internet in a computer in like your phone. I think it's good to not know things. You know, like I remember as a kid, like the world was so much the world was so much brighter because I didn't know everything. You know what I mean? And I didn't act like I knew everything, and I knew I didn't know everything. So like I think as I'm like in my early 30s, like I think about this stuff more and more. Not an obsessive way where I'm like I'm gonna go hunt Bigfoot in that sense of the word, but at the same time also like saying yeah, well, there's way more credence to it than to just dismiss it. And I think that dismissing stuff like this, or just cryptid discussion in general, is it's lazy. It's intellectually lazy. It's just such an
Hmm.
easy cop out. You know what I mean? Just to be like, oh well, it's fake. It's like okay, like you can say that about anything. You know what I mean? Anything can be fake. And no one can prove it. No one knows. No one can actually like write it down. No one has cited it or shot something or whatever, like whatever it might be to like ascertain for what you'd use to ascertain truth of it, like the true nature of this. But and that's part of why I guess people are still interested in it
Hmm.
because we don't know, and like people are always like searching for like that understanding or like that clarity or that closure that I was talking about earlier. You know?
Yeah, I think some people get into Bigfoot because they're fascinated or they had an experience and they're looking for other people. I think just some people are hungry for knowledge and some people aren't.
Yeah,
I remember growing up
that's
having
true.
those kind of arguments with family members. They're just being like, "Well, aliens don't exist." I'm like, "Well, why not?" And they're just like,
Mm.
"Because they don't." I'm like, "Yeah, it's not an argument, like you said. That's not a proper discussion."
Yeah, it's so lazy to just be
Hmm.
like, oh, they just don't exist. Like, well, just because you can't see it and immediately prove it or pull up a picture on your smartphone doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You know, like, yeah,
But
it's something that bothers me a lot about people in recent years is that just dismissiveness about things. And I get it. Like, so much stuff happens every day. So much horrible, crazy, just unbelievable stuff happens every single day that I get it. Like, I get being like fatigued and like not even being able to like intake things. I mean, if people had heard some of the stuff that the U.S. government declassified to be in like the '90s when I was a kid, like in the early thousands when I was a kid, like people would have, it would have been like it would have stopped traffic. You know what I mean? Like if the government had come out and said like, yeah, we don't know what we have like pictures of these like orbs and stuff flying near planes, like that would have stopped the world. You know, like, and it's just funny to think about how like now people reading like, oh yeah, I knew about that, and oh yeah, I knew that was real, and they just scroll on. You know what I mean?
yeah, now it's just like common knowledge.
Yeah.
But no, I meant to say something earlier too. You brought up orbs before.
Hmm.
Um, some people have made that claim that what if the orbs you see are all these entities before they pick a form to interact with?
Wow. Okay. Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Mm.
I've heard of them. I've heard of it like in reference to like soul, to souls and stuff like that, and then it being entities. But that's a new
Yeah.
one. Being like
Yeah, not
in
that
the
that's 100% what they are, but it's an interesting thought that before they pick a physical body, you just see them as this energy orb or whatever, this light.
right, the energy, right?
But I have a few notes. I have ADD, so I kind of lost some of them. But one of them, I was going to say too, I've heard some of the podcasts I listen to. They say that when people bring up their stories, they have like their own checklists. And if they
Hmm.
hit too many of the same buzzwords, then they're kind of like, well, maybe this guy could be just telling me a story. But same
Interesting.
thing, they don't want to just dismiss everybody, listen to the stories.
Like specific like things that they mentioned, or do you mean like they just say things that would make it seem like they've heard it somewhere else?
A bit of both, like going into Bigfoot may that it may not be biological. People bring up like the infrasound or the mind
Hmm.
speak, and you can't really
Hmm.
explain how you're seemingly communicating with a Bigfoot telepathically, you know? So if certain buzzwords like that might put people off to say, well, um, maybe you could just be telling a tale.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, do you think that there are people that are actually like? I mean, there are people that are obviously trying to create hoaxes. Do you think that's so common these days, or do you think that's kind of gone by the wayside now?
Um, I think it still probably could be possible. Because there's some YouTube channels I like to listen to where it's like people send in those stories.
Hmm.
So in that aspect, maybe some of them could just be made up, but they're
Embellished and
believable
stuff. Yeah.
enough
Right.
to where you just don't know. But people bring that up with like crop circles. Um, there's I don't know what number they give, but there's like a certain percentage you really can't explain how it formed, but also the effects after. You know what I mean? Like some of them
Hmm.
seem to have mutated like overnight. Certain things are bent but not crushed in a certain way that a human couldn't do it. There have been ones that year after year, the image still comes back. So I think there are still, even if there are a bunch of fake stories and hoaxes, they still would be like the true, honest ones deep down.
Do you know if there have like this is something I don't know about this particularly, but do you know if there have been like if there were like crop circles, maybe back in the day, like before, let's say pre Roswell? Are there any stories of stuff like that, or like maybe not necessarily crops, but like prairies or anything like that that have been like pat down? Because I've been in the mountains in Idaho recently. There's tons of big open meadows. You know what I mean? I've always wondered like, well, why wouldn't there be a crop circle here? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's also like a proximity to civilization thing. That might be another aspect of that to think about. Like, well, these intelligent creatures wouldn't be able to understand. Like, these are where the people are. They're gonna go do it here, not in backwoods Idaho. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they
So
might stay more to something more populated, but um I think I forgot your question.
just seeing if you knew about anything. Like, do you know
Oh,
when those?
that predates Roswell. I want to say through the podcast I've listened to, somebody has done a dive and mentioned they're all like middle-aged stories, but I can't think of one that I can name. This incident on this year. But yeah,
Right.
I think that is real. They're all older stories, like Middle Ages, maybe even further back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I read up the I forget where it was. Maybe it's Dresden. I forget which city it was. But it's a city in Germany. They had the lights over the sky. Maybe it was Leipzig. It was Leipzig. I don't remember exactly, but it's a city in Europe where they had like these. They have all these paintings of all the crazy like lights in the sky, and it was like a cosmic battle. You know what I mean? Like in the modern, where we just assume it to be like looks like a Star Wars battle. At least we think like a medieval person's approximation it would be.
Yeah, I think
Um,
there's Renaissance paintings kind of like that. I used to
mhm.
be big in the Ancient Alien show when it first came on. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Wow,
Um,
yeah, I
I
remember
think
that
they've
show.
done a few episodes like that, possible space battles and like old paintings.
Yeah, that's I can't remember what city that is. There's a specific city that's tied to, but there's like a painting of it like over the top of the like the skyline. I can't remember what that is. And I don't know if 1519 would be like the dancing plague, and I would be like putting things together here in my memory. I'm like, I want to look it up, but I'm not going to. I'm just gonna leave it for now.
Uh,
Um,
Speaking of stuff in space, a new thing that has been popping up are creatures that are living up in the higher atmospheres. That's really fascinating. Because people say they see like giant manta rays, snake-like, jellyfish-like things, big amoebas.
wow, like in the so in the upper atmosphere, like how far up?
Um, Pretty high up, like borderline space. Like I know there's a few stories from like NASA and the space station seeing things up there, but also people from like planes, like maybe they could be curious, they come in, which could be some of the orbs and or the alien ships that they
Mm,
see. Because
yeah,
one type are the plasmids that they could move fairly quick, like you see in the things, like they kind of like zip around because of the high like energy. Basically, they're fueled by like plasma and stuff. So they could do things in a biological sense that seems magical or advanced to us. Like I said, like the zipping around, they just really move
right.
that quick.
Yeah, like amoebas move pretty quickly relative to their space.
hmm
You know what I
And then
mean?
there's
As
stories
well.
of like carnivorous clouds or clouds dropping bones um,
Interesting.
from like the 1800s. And I think there's a story here in the US, but also in like Europe and stuff. That's something that's
Wow.
been popping up. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's always stories like that. Like there's got to be like stories like that. Most of the time, I feel like have a kernel of truth in them. You know, like you're not like trying to claim monarchical ties. You know, with a story like this, you're just trying to say like, yo, this crazy thing happened, and people like I if something like crazy like that happened to me, I would want to tell people. You know what I mean?
hmm
Like I'd be working hard to make sure people knew exactly what I'd seen. Yeah, that's something I keep thinking about as well. Like maybe one day something will happen to me. You know, that like or like I'll like experience something that will make me like more gung ho about this. Pardon me, sorry, I'm yawning. I haven't had coffee yet today.
No problem. Yeah,
I'm
you
pretty good
said
about.
hunt. Like I don't want to go hunt a Bigfoot, but I want to go look for one.
No, not hunt. I mean hunt as in just generally like look for it. I don't mean hunt like as in shoot it.
Yeah, no, I say it
I
like
don't
that too.
even
Like I want
mean
to go
that.
hunt Bigfoot, but I mean like go look, not like go find one to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't, I mean it in a sense of like when you hear the colloquial term, like, oh, you're a Bigfoot hunter, or you're like, you're
hmm
a whatever truther, or you're like, that's not bad. I don't mean actually going to literally go set up a deer
Yeah.
blind and get an elephant gun
I
and
mean,
try
there
and
are
shoot.
some people who have that mindset. That
Really?
yeah, if they saw one, they would shoot one. But
Wow.
also
Yeah,
thinking
that's,
about that, there are stories of people who've seen one through the scopes,
mhm.
seen how human it looks, and felt bad about taking the shot, so they don't. And they're all stories of people who've
Wow.
um seen like other Bigfoots kind of behind them, and that had gave them like a sense of I probably wouldn't be alive if I did take that shot. There's a Bigfoot behind me. If I shot one of the kin, I don't know if I would walk away, which is
Hmm.
also a scary thought too.
Yeah, I mean, also like just thinking about, I mean, I think hunting is a biological reality, but I also can acknowledge that like not every animal is the same. They're not all the same thing to be hunted, and I would not. If it's something like a Bigfoot, which is such a like, it'd be such a groundbreaking discovery for humans. Like, I don't think shooting that would be very chill. Like I would want to preserve that. I think like the Afrikaner in me wants to preserve nature than as opposed to just destroy it. Whether or not I believe in eating meat is kind of an aside. I wouldn't just kill a rare animal just to be like, oh well, here it is. That's how we've eliminated so many animals. Even in the modern age, that's how the dodo is gone. That's how like so many animals have been just made extinct because of people
Yeah, I
being like,
forget
oh, You
what
know what I mean?
it was. But yeah, crocodile skin in Australia skyrocketed, and then that kind of came over to Americas, and we almost wiped out the American alligator because of the skin.
Yep.
Same with like
hmm
the buffalo, almost
Yeah,
went
the
to them
buffalo
to
is a huge example
extinction.
of that, man. We talk about that here in Idaho all the time because we're just literally sit off the train and just shoot buffalo for sport, and then just leave the carcasses,
Hmm.
which is
You know,
crazy. Like
there's
they'd shoot
the
like,
famous photo of like the mount of skulls.
yep. It's sad, man. It's and there's a lot of things that I think like on the right, like as someone who's I guess I'm on the right, whatever. You have to think about like people people do things that seem there are things that seemed like a good idea at the time that we've learned and we've grown from. You know what I mean? And like there is a sense of progress in that. And I don't mean progress in the sense of like like the standard left wing march to the absurdities of reality. I just mean like there is definitely an understanding of like we should preserve ecology, and that wasn't necessarily a thing that people thought even 200 years ago, 100 years ago. Um, and I'm sad that the bison are gone. The bison are awesome. They're such an awesome animal in general. I'm sad that the big herds of pronghorn antelope are gone. I'm sad that the big herds of elk. Elk are like a. This is something people don't know about elk. Elk are not actually like a mountain animal. Like they're meant to be in big open fields and have big giant families. We know that because it's what they used to have, and then we killed a lot of them, and then they changed their habits and they changed where they lived because they were trying to. The ones that survived obviously had evolved to do different things than the ones that were killed. You know what I mean? And I mean, if you think about just like when you think about something like that, like you think of how like there are no bison. There are bison, obviously, in different areas, like in Antelope Island, Salt Lake City, and there's places in Wyoming and stuff like that where
Yellowstone.
they're around, Idaho too, but they're not like millions of them like there used to be, And that example right there is like why I'm like maybe the natives, maybe like the Blackfeet or like the Nez Perce in North Idaho actually did have a big fight with these things, and they wiped them out. We wouldn't know about it. We would have no idea. We would. There's no written record or no stone writings about this.
Well,
This
yeah, it's not quite Bigfoot, but there's the Lovelock Cave in Nevada where supposedly the Indians killed like a tribe of red-headed giants.
Wow, really?
Hmm. But
And they
that
weren't
some,
Spanish.
huh?
And they weren't Spanish. I'm
No,
just
because
joking.
they were beefing. But there's other stories of like big cannibal like humanoids that have beefed with the natives.
Yeah, I've definitely read stuff about that before. I've read stuff like that from like the Navajo legends. That's where also like I think I don't know if it's necessarily from the Navajo, but like the skinwalker stuff is huge out here too. Obviously in the West, everyone talks about skinwalkers and the idea of we talked about earlier like mimicking and stuff like that earlier, but like I even like had people talk about how there did used to be vampires, but because they were there's like maybe a copy pasta from 4chan when I was on it back in like the early thousands or like '06 to like '10 probably. There was like these copy pastas going around about how like copy pastas going around about how the vampires were like an apex predator, and then we were able to construct like right angles like this. It confused their eyesight. It confused their brain essentially, and that's why when you're holding a cross up to like a vampire would confuse like their predatory instincts, and then would allow them to be vanquished in some way or whatever. This isn't this is like a completely outside story and part of it. But I think about things like that, like things that could have existed in the past that wouldn't have necessarily left a fossil record and wouldn't have necessarily this is kind of like the ancient aliens thing. It wouldn't have been written down. There's no there's no USB drives you can just go plug in and have all this information. But it doesn't mean it didn't happen, you know, and it doesn't mean that Bigfoot didn't exist and has existed. I mean, we already know Australopithecus or whatever it was.
Was it
Like the
Gigantopithecus?
Gigantopithecus is probably what I'm thinking of. Yeah, Australopithecus is like the Austronesian thing. But anyways, like those existed. Like we know they did. You know what I mean? And then whether or not this is the Sasquatch story or the Bigfoot story or the swamp ape story has just been passed down from you know, word of mouth beyond its worth. I mean, like, look at avocados. Avocados are still have a huge seed because they used to be eaten by giant land sloths that don't exist anymore. But the avocados still do.
Well, actually, I want to say that they all the people who say they still see them, the giant sloths. That would be
Oh,
another
really?
kind of cryptid, yeah, in South
Oh,
America.
okay. I did not know about that at all.
Hmm. Like it's one of
Yeah,
those that they say they still see them every now and again.
yeah.
But yeah, like one thing I was gonna mention earlier to you, you brought up about folklore's designed to just keep kids safe.
Hmm.
I've heard that about like changelings. One of the things that could explain it is kind of like autism. You know, the baby is born fine, but as it develops, they started to notice they were off, and so they explained it was like, oh, it's been swapped out. You know, it's somebody else's
Right.
kid, but really they just were autistic and had certain attributes, I guess. I don't know how you would say it.
Yeah,
You know,
like
like
almost
the
like
not looking in eyes or not wanting to be touched.
yeah, definitely. I think that's also like that's also been something you could point towards like um definitely towards like at least in Africa, and this is like my background and knowing stuff about this, like people that were autistic or that were just kind of like odd or strange were usually pushed towards becoming like healers or spiritual folk, if you will, or in African's case, like a witch is both a man and a woman. It could be either one, and then would cast spells. You know what I mean? And those people were often always either mentally challenged, mentally retarded, or had just autism, or were just not neurotypical. You know what I mean? And I think that it would culturally push people a little bit more towards being weirder than being more normal because it would be encouraged. Um, that's a really interesting connection, though. Like I definitely could see that probably being the same here in North America as well. And I imagine it's probably been a part of like Celtic culture and Gallic culture and all cultures. Honestly, that's something that I never think about. But I wonder. I always wonder what like the people definitely had autism back in the day. Like Mozart probably
I
had
would
autism.
imagine that it's probably not something new.
Yeah,
I mean, you can
exactly.
make an argument maybe it's on the rise because we just had more
Hmm.
people, who have that genetic abnormality can pass it along easily. But yeah, I would imagine it probably happened.
Yeah. I mean, it would have to have at this point like this. You know, we've been alive for a long. Our humanity has been around for so long. It would have to have had something like that happen. I think. Like Vestal virgins as well, like in Rome and stuff like that, were always a bit addled and a bit affected because they were taking a bunch of ephedra and stuff like that. A bunch of like old drugs don't really exist anymore. You know. Um, yeah, it's just funny to think about that. That's something that people didn't understand. You know, like they didn't understand that like autism is just neurodivergence.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And their interpretation of that was fundamentally different because of like what their realities were. That's again the whole point of like where I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna just say like, oh, Mothman's fake. It's like, well, I don't know, man. You know, like your reputation is everything in West Virginia. You know what I mean? Out in the backwoods, like people, you know, if you have a story that's associated with your name, you want it to be hopefully more positive than negative. I think, and people wouldn't want to just throw away their reputation in a small area like West Virginia by saying, "Hey, I saw this friggin' Mothman thing." You know what I mean? Like it would be negative for them to do that. So like the chances of them committing on this lie and like putting their hand up to God and saying this whole lie would just be it would be ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't make sense. It would from a human perspective, it wouldn't make sense to do that. It would just be ruining your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
unless you
like
really committed to the bit, like they say that with like,
right.
Scientology, it's all made up cult stuff, but people buy into it.
Yeah, people buy into it. And I mean if people are willing to believe it, I mean I guess it has to have some kind of spiritual power and something
But
behind it.
speaking of, I think it's,
Yo,
huh?
the Zoom is telling me that I have 9 or 10 minutes left.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes it's very limited on time if you don't upgrade. But we can call it here because I think it's been about an hour and a half, more or
Okay.
less. Um, but yeah, I was gonna say, it's crazy too when you dive into the occult stuff. Like he had connections to Jack Parsons, who did some rituals out in the Mojave Desert. he talked with Crowley. I think that's a funny
Probably.
story that he was like, "Hey, check this dude out. I think he's legit." And Crowley was like, "Nah, I think he's a fraud." And then he ended up
Really?
taking his wife and a bunch of money from him, Jack Parsons. He got scammed.
So I know a little bit about Jack Paulson. I don't know a lot about it, but I know a bunch about Aleister Crowley.
Hmm. Oh,
And I
and
know
I
what
was
the
gonna
whole
say
what's
too
all
with
about.
MK Ultra, some people tie
Yeah.
him into it too because he did a lot of work with like peyote
Oh,
in
really?
like the
Wow, I
early
didn't know that.
1900s that could lead to, I think it did lead directly into the government wanting to be like, well, maybe we can drug a bunch of people and see what happens.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, because he
I
was
mean,
using it to try and talk to entities. So yeah, it would make sense they would
yeah.
try because there's a whole thing about him possibly being like a double, triple agent during like World War I, which leads into World War II with Hitler being
Hmm.
fascinated with the occult and Crowley and stuff.
Yeah, that's also something to think about too. Is like that wasn't only going on one side too. Just because Hitler was so fascinated by it doesn't mean that there haven't been smaller compartmentalized units and groups of people throughout the largest mechanized occurrence in human history, which would be World War II. You know what I mean? Like it was a massive event for all of human history. It took place in 4 years, which is crazy. For like 5 years, totally crazy. Um, but like it's just so much stuff happened. So much stuff was
Hmm.
moving around. Like it created the cargo cults. It created so much. It's just such a massive event in human history that it would make sense that like that was what drew like after the atomic explosions.
Hmm.
That's what drew more attention from the cosmic gallery, if you
Yeah,
will.
like
You
there's
know what I mean?
stories I've heard of people saying basically they were like invisible beings running around on fire. Like I do think there's some kind of like layering to reality
Hmm. Yeah.
that you could just slightly be off, be here physically, but also just slightly off. Like I think in comics, that's what what's his face King did. Um, that's what he would do. He because he's from the future, so he went back in time and he would
Hmm.
just kind of slightly shift reality so he could stay here and witness it, but not age and not really be interactive with anything. I thought that was an interesting thing too. Like it's like going from like red to blue, but still being here physically.
Interesting.
Hmm. But yeah, I think a lot of things are connected once you start looking into it, because one project leads to another one.
Hmm.
But yeah, the early 1900s leading up to World War II, there's a lot of cult stuff, and then that gives into like the government, all government doing things
Right. It's funny
with
how that
like
happened. I think
NASA. We had a lot of them scientists coming in.
part of that is like it's part of that transition from it being like this kind of like secret society study into all of a sudden becoming like a governmental conspiracy thing
Hmm.
is right after World War II when we had these huge organizations of people that had been this bureaucracy grew so much to like accommodate all these different organizations within humanity. I think that's why we tend to see stuff like that afterwards because we just assume that that's where like we just assume that there would be a government office or something. We assume that there would be people that are on top of this. We assume that there would be such a big organization that we can't possibly fathom. You know what I mean? That's what I'm
Hmm.
saying too. Like I think that there are definitely people that have been thinking about this. It's like we've been a pretty big country with a lot of extra money thrown around for a long time now. Like I imagine there are people that are doing something like this. There's so many random house oversight committees. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, so much red
there's
tape.
there's there's got to be something like that, and I think it's only a matter of time before the truth comes out. Like always, like it's
And
only
I
a matter
think
of time
that's why you
before.
can hide a lot of stuff too, like aim career trope, because it's you could
Yeah.
create so many sub departments that only do
Hmm.
certain things, but the whole picture, like the
Compartmentalize.
the bomb, yeah, the bombs. Not everybody knew what they were doing. They just knew
Right.
what
Exactly. With
they
Manhattan
had in
Project.
front of them.
Right. Exactly what I mean. And like it, dude. The idea that we couldn't to quote Phil Labonte, the idea that we wouldn't have something like that going on is, I think, it's like bless your heart, dude. Like you
Hmm.
really don't think that we have something like that going on. It's like it's the whole story of Men in Black. Like Come on, like you really don't think yeah, of course aliens
Or
exist. Everyone
what's
knows
that
that.
joke that oh the government just stopped doing all the bad things?
Oh yeah, they just decided one day like, hey, we're really being bad guys
Hmm.
now. We should pack it in, boys. This is yeah, exactly. I mean, like that's like with all these big organizations, people don't know about them until they're declassified years later. You know what I mean? Like, who's to say anything? That's why it's better to have an open mind to like these discussions, I think, than to be close-minded and like the knee-jerk reactions to immediately like, oh, well, that's fake. You know what I mean? I get that, and I've had to like fight that in myself to like gain the wisdom and the perspective, I think, to like have deeper conversations about things like that may matter to me more than others, or may matter to other people more, like technology, like faith, like spirituality, like like evolution, like the future of the human species in general. Like I think those are very important things, and I think being open to this discussion and stuff like that makes you better able to like have deep conversations about that and really get to like the nature of things if that's what interests you too. Like it's not even to say that everyone needs to know that. Not everyone needs to be an expert. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But yeah, man, I really appreciate this chat, man. It's been great.
Yeah, let me know if you want to come back because sometimes I do feel like I don't have a lot to add to the conversation because I'm not out there doing stuff. But
Mhm.
also, yeah, it's fun just to talk. You can speculate and theorize all day about things.
You can you can keep like tying everything together forever, dude. That's definitely like that's something that I kind of got away from when I was younger. Like, I had a lot of friends that were, taking psychedelics and stuff like that in university, and like they would talk about the nature of reality. And eventually, I just got bored of it. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I have to like live my life and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I still have to go and earn money and go to a job, and I still have to like biological reality. I still have to eat food. I mean, still have to exercise, and I think it was almost like in like my late 20s I kind of got had like this hubris about it. I just kind of like dismissed it a lot, and then now in my early 30s I'm like trying to like I'm kind of revisiting it a lot more, I think, in finding my faith. And so yeah, I really appreciate having this conversation because like it just reaffirms that like, yeah, I'm not crazy, like the things that I'm thinking are legitimate. And like, yeah, I just appreciate having like the chance to have a discussion about something I don't normally talk about, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, that's what I think about too sometimes. Like I have a lot of like media knowledge because I've watched a lot of movies and stuff. So I feel
mhm.
like maybe I could connect the dots in a way maybe somebody else might have, or at least give somebody else an idea that could lead to something else. So that's why I like
Right.
having it too.
Yeah, totally, man. All right. Yeah, I guess I will.
Do you, I
I
was saying you want to
will.
shout
My
anything
father's
out?
yelling at me out there, probably yelling. We can do some stuff for him.
Okay.
But yeah, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for having me on. And hello to the viewers. And yeah, I will hit you up soon here.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Take care. Enjoy the
Yeah,
rest of
thanks,
your day.
Alex. Likewise.
See
Peace
ya.
out, man.